Hey! Hey! What's up, everybody? Welcome to your favorite Average Good podcast. I'm Jimmy alongside Chuck and Big Tones. Guys, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a couple days. How are you feeling? Chuck, I'll come to you. You're looking nice and fresh today. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm run down. You talk about a Disney World experience, rushed out with the hurricane, and then into a youth tournament this weekend, which brought me back to my old days. That nostalgic feeling of getting up early, all the kids were super happy, and then we won the tournament. So
flexing on us already,
yeah.
Big Tones.
Look at that. Yeah. 2 minutes in, he already put the flex on. Holy cow.
What was the score in the final?
How many goals? How many goals did we get?
We won 7-5 against the top team.
7-5
Connecticut. Yeah.
Wow. Can we talk about the defending or lack thereof? We got to work on some team shape, baby. You're scoring the goals. We got to get it locked down in the back.
Hey, these are problems you have when you're trying to teach kids how to build out of the back and keep the ball and be not afraid to play, into tight spaces. So it's a learning experience,
All right. So we're going to get more Chuck Guardiola here after we get into it. So hit like and subscribe. The show is about to start. Let's go. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average to Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Tony Miola, and we have a great show for you today. The U.S. men's national team is playing against Mexico in a friendly, and we're going to have a big preview of that, though 5 of our players have been sent home by new coach Mauricio Pochettino. We'll break that down. We'll obviously talk about Mexico and their chances and their recent result against Valencia, a club team 2-2. Plenty of things to talk about, like always. Big Tones, I'm coming to you, though, first. How are you feeling? Are your thoughts changed at all after our performance, our 2-0 win against Panama on Saturday?
I think all in all, my thoughts from the other night post-match kind of stay the same, right? Pochettino, we saw a little bit, some tactics that he changed around. Building out of the back with 3 is the one that comes to mind. Initially, there was a little bit more bite. The game for them was about transition, and then they needed to figure out something maybe to stretch the game, and they got 2 long balls over the top, which we haven't seen much over the last couple of years, that resulted in some goals. So that's all good. So decent start for Mauricio Pochettino. I think right now it's just him kind of feeling his database in his head with all of these players. And as you mentioned, with 5 guys out, plus the rest of the injuries, he's going to get a pretty good look at some guys over the next couple of days. So all positive start in general. I think we still, we're still looking at this by the time June of 26 comes around. It certainly needs to be better, but I don't know that you can complain about too much after the 2-0 win.
All right, so let's talk about, Chuck, the 5 players that are going home. Christian Pulisic going back to Milan because of load management is being the phrase. We have Marlon Fossey, who didn't even get to play against Panama. He is going home. It's a bit disappointing. I think we wanted to see him get some minutes in these 2 games. Weston McKennie didn't suit up, didn't get off the bench against Panama, even though he was eligible to do so. He is going back to Juventus. Ricardo Pepi, after scoring, goes back to Zach Steffen. The one player that didn't suit up in the 23 against Panama is now going back to the Colorado Rapids as well. And they're not replacing those players. So we're taking 20 down to Guadalajara against Mexico, which means I think we're going to see a little bit of rotation. We're obviously going to see some new faces getting some minutes. How are you feeling about this? Because there was a quote from Mauricio Pochettino who said, what the quote is, as we have said, we are always going to make decisions that are in the best interest of our players and respect the relationship we have with their clubs. And I find that to be refreshing in some ways, but also someone that's been very close to the club scene. I'm sure he got handed back players last season, in particular with Chelsea, where guys weren't healthy when they came back from their national team.
Hey, don't act like Berhalter wasn't doing that too with the club process and trying to be on their good sides. Like, let's not think that he's reinventing the wheel here. That's something that Berhalter did too. So I want to point that out. I think, when you're looking at the situation, it's smart. Pochettino just wants to get to know these guys. This, as you have behind you, trust the Poches. You gotta trust the process. We knew it wasn't going to be something that was fixed overnight. Panama had the ball for a lot of that second half, and the U.S. just defended, and it wasn't anything mind-blowing. You can imagine that if you're going to play a back three, that you're probably not going to have some of those players in certain positions, and when everyone's healthy, it's probably going to look a lot different. Serginho Dest can't do what Joe Scally did and be a right center back, for instance. What does it look like when Chris Richards is there? Because he can play that right wing, that right back spot that tucks in as a center back, because he does play in a back three. So it comes to him very naturally. Same with Mark McKenzie. He plays on the left side in a back three. So there are things that will change. And you also have to look at the opposition. I don't want to take any credit away from Panama. And Thomas Christensen is a fantastic coach. What he's been able to do for Panama is remarkable. However, they don't have world-class attacking players. So that's where they really lack. They have the defensive fundamentals. They have a good midfield in the way that they can build out and counter. But again, they're missing clinical finishers. I mean, Fajardo has that incredible opportunity, can't even put it on target. So that's just some of the issues that Panama has to work through. But ultimately, the U.S. have to be better. We know that. But there were some things that we could see and appreciate that Pochettino is trying to introduce with this team, and I think it's going to be a slow introduction, and it'll be good to see once we have the entire team available after, outside of the injury. So yeah, I'm optimistic. If you told me after the game one, how do I feel? I'd say I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful, but yeah, there's still a lot of work to do. And I think all the players would say the same thing.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and you allude to it there, I'll say it a little bit differently, what's the phrase? You can't rush a masterpiece. I mean, if we want to have Mauricio Pochettino have us peaking at the 2026 World Cup, then it's going to take some time. We got to give him some time to cook, Big Tones, right? He's got to see what all of his ingredients are so that he can make the best meal. And that's just going to take some time. He can't do it right away without knowing all of the pieces that are in place, or I should keep the metaphor the same, all the ingredients, knowing what he has at his disposal. So how much time, though, I think is going to be the big question from us as fans and from the fan base overall. How much time before we can really start to evaluate his methodology really having an imprint? Because I thought I saw it in the first 20 or 30 minutes. And if I was Mauricio Pochettino, I'd be thinking, I showed you, we saw it, and it was there. Now, I guess the challenge is for this next group of players to try to mimic that, or to extend that time. Instead of being good for 20 to 30, can we be good for 45? And then we can keep pushing from there.
Yeah, and you saw it in 20 minutes. I'm sure the players felt it even sooner, right? Because they were working on it. But I think it was clear we saw something different than what we've seen over the last couple of years, right? And we'd never really, I mean, Greg in general, and this isn't, we see both of these things. This isn't good or bad. Just in general, we knew when they were going to build out, 2 center backs were going to be wide and the 2 full backs were going to be higher. Well, we didn't get that, right? So we got a little bit more unbalanced, if you will. We were building out of the back with 3. So as much as you and I are 2 guys that have been clamoring for 3 in the back, we built out of the back. But I said the other night, and Charlie just mentioned it, you bring Serginho Dest in, and now the picture might be a little bit different. And I saw something online, a writer saying that maybe when Dest comes in, we let Robinson stay back. And I'm like, you're writing this? This is a guy that's like the best left back in England right now by ratings, right? And we want him to go 4-2. Maybe one guy goes and one guy stays. So it still looks like there's so many ways to, which is normal. There's so many ways to kind of slice that piece of the puzzle up. But just in general, Jimmy, I just like that we had a different idea and a different feeling. Instead of both wide guys always touching the sideline, right? Always to have their heels on the line, and both fullbacks always up the field. Just something that had, I joke because Bora used to go, you must have, and he'd go like, you have to sniff the game out. We had a little bit more of that in this game, and that sounds like, in listening to Pochettino, that's what he wants from this group. So, Jimmy, sign of something to come.
Jimmy, could I ask you a question?
Shoot.
if you take into consideration the players that are available now and playing who aren't your typical regulars, with everyone back healthy, who's still in the picture? Not just in the squad, the game day squad, but playing. Who's still in the picture playing in your mind so far? And I know it's only one game, but
rephrase what the guys that were there, Charlie, or the other guys?
So if you can bring back in Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie's healthy, and Serginho Desta's healthy, and Chris Richards is healthy, and you have all these guys who would be in the picture normally, regularly, who aren't.
Gio you throw
Gio Reyna.
I don't know if you throw him in there. He doesn't play.
Right. But guys who are here now, who stays, given those guys even are available? If there is one in your mind.
Yeah,
I mean, Morris and Bucio, right?
Yeah, I think those two would be in for sure. Yunus Musah, you'd have to make room for him because if Des is healthy, you'd probably put him out wide right. Timo Weah is another one we didn't bring up. That's another
exactly.
Like, where do you fit him in? If you're gonna, I guess he could play the way that it seemed like Pochettino was playing. I know Yunus felt more like a right wing back with a back three. Jedi was the other wing back on the left side, and when Scally was more of a central center back, right? That's how it felt. Then you had 2 holding 6s and then 2 10s with Brendan and Christian Pulisic hanging in those areas, and then you had Josh Sargent up top. If Timo Weah comes in, not to say he can't play centrally, he could play as one of our 10s, but I wonder how you figure that out, because if you have Musah, who actually he had a great quote. Somebody asked him about Pochettino. Let's talk about Yunus Musah really quick because this is kind of relevant to what we're saying. He said, Pochettino, he knows a lot about my background. He knows about my academy days at Valencia and Arsenal. That's why I played wide. I used to play in that position. It's nice to have a coach that knows a lot about me and that has a lot of faith in me. I'm just really grateful. I don't know if there's some shade that's being thrown at Berhalter there, but it's hard not to read between the lines on that one.
Yeah.
But
well, hey, if you remember Nations League Part 1, Musah did not play. And we were all like, what the hell is this? Yeah. Why? And they won, but we were all confused as hell why Musah wasn't playing. Do you remember who started in the semifinals?
No.
In midfield.
You got to remind me. There's been a lot of games since then.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hint. He plays for San Jose.
Jackson Ewell?
Jackson Ewell
started in the first Nations League in midfield. Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta. These were the guys that were playing, and Yunus Musah did not come off the bench. And my mind was blown. Timothy Weah came off the bench as a outside back, as a right back, because remember that when Mexico was attacking us and we played in a back 3, and it was like, oh my God, panic mode. And then that's when we brought in Weah as more of a defensive wing back. But that gives you an idea of where we were at the start of this process with this group.
Yeah, that's interesting. So bringing that into the equation, and Musah obviously being a little bit frustrated and now being said, hey, I like playing out wide. My coach knows me in this spot, gives me the freedom to do so. When Des comes back in and Timo Weah comes back in, then these are good problems to have. Obviously, a luxury of choices, but yeah, it's hard to say. And I'm curious how Pochettino is going to manage that to make sure he finds minutes for everybody. But again, it's a good problem.
Tony, I was going to say, Tony, do you agree with this? Of all the players on the pitch and Pochettino's new style and system, there's only one that I'm not a lock on, and that's Brenden Aaronson at the 10. Because I still don't feel that he's that connective tissue that is needed to not only connect with the back line, but in terms of creativity in the attacking third. Yes, he works his butt off and he's great at the press and winning the ball back on the counter press. But in terms of breaking teams down in low blocks, that's not Brenden Aaronson's game, and I don't feel that he's improved in that way either.
I've for a long time said with Brenden Aaronson, I see him in having a really big role coming off the bench, right? In certain games, not every single game. Games that are really physical and tight, maybe those aren't the games that he comes off the bench. If the game opens up or you need some pressing, as you mentioned, you need some activity in the middle of the field, a guy that's going to buzz around, he's really good at that role. I think when it's all said and done, and of course, who knows what qualities, and we'll find out over time what Pochettino wants, he's not a starter with the group, right? So, but he did remember in his press conferences, he kind of singled out Brenden Aaronson, talking about he's playing in too many positions. We have to find a position for him. Did we get an idea of where he thinks his position is? Because if that's the position that he sees him in, let's call it a number 10, right? Then think about the depth at 10. Gio's there. Tillman was a guy there. Aronson obviously is there. And then who are the other guys that you put in as sort of the 10, if you will? There aren't a lot of options unless you move Christian Pulisic inside there, which I think is always going to be an option, but he inherently roams in there anyway. It's part of his game. So there aren't a lot of like true number 10s, and someone will scream out, I'm sure, give Diego Luna a chance. Okay, put Luna on the list. But when you really think about it, that particular role, if he plays it as a true 10, there aren't a lot of guys there.
Now, I'll jump in and say this, Chuck, to answer this. You're coaching a youth team, right? So when you're evaluating who you want to play and you're trying to find those right combinations of players, I know this sounds crazy because I'm relating a national team situation to a youth team, but it's similar. When you're as a coach, you're looking at your player profiles. So what matters to you? What are you trying to do? And I think Pochettino is going to do the same. Brendan Aronson brings this to the table, right? He can press his ass off and he's going to close the ball down. He's going to be tireless. Or you can get someone who maybe doesn't do that extra work, but can give you a little bit of that final pass. I guess the rub is, can we get the ball to that player that can make the final pass in good areas? Or does that player have to drop too deep? Or if he's getting crowded, he's not going to find that extra space. Now, I'm speaking generically here. I'm not trying to identify one particular person, but as it pertains to Brendan Aronson, and when you build your own team, even at the youth level, you're looking for the player profiles that you know are going to execute more consistently in what you want to do and how you want your team to play. And that is what Pochettino is going to have to decide. Does Brendan Aronson, though he lacks in some areas, make up for it in all the other things that you love? Or are you trying to play another way? Is there a middle ground where you can have both? That's what I think.
Well, it just depends what he wants out of that position. The style of play. Are they playing high press aggressive where he doesn't give a damn about a 10 in terms of someone who's poking and prodding back lines? Is Brendan Aronson okay against the Panama? If you play against a Jamaica or you play against a France or Brazil, what does that position look like? Are you still playing that way? There are a number of questions. Maybe he's not convinced yet on where Brendan Aronson wants to play long-term or where he thinks he should play long-term. So he said, hey, let me give him a run out against Panama at the 10.
That's
against
the only
Mexico,
place you can play
if he's
him,
not there. No, you could play him in the Yunus Musah role.
You could play him out there, but if you're going to – the thing was that Yunus Musah was hugging the sideline in a way that I haven't seen any of our players really hug it. Even Dest at times, if he's playing out wide with air quotes here.
But Musah did come inside.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, he ends up scoring a goal in the middle of the goal, right? So he's still making runs to the inside. But I felt like when we were trying to build out, he was very, very wide, even if the ball was on Jedi's side at times as the buildup was starting to develop. But ultimately, I don't know if we're going to get the most out of Brendan Aronson in that position, especially when we have other options. If you're going to play two inverted wingers and have double 10s, and we saw that. Remember we played against Morocco. Didn't Brendan Aronson play as one of the double 10s with Pulisic?
We didn't have two double 10s against Panama.
It felt
when
like
Pulisic came. Yeah, when Pulisic came inside, it looked that way.
We had a lot of build-up play in the middle where Pulisic was inside. I agree with you that when it started on paper, it wouldn't look like that. But I think as the game played out, then we saw a lot more of an inverted winger position from Brendan Aronson. Was already kind of more central because Musah was already standing out wide right, but Christian would pinch inside and Jedi would overlap.
And I think that was just due to the way that Panama was playing. When
that's fair.
At back three and Michael Murillo would come back and then said, okay, Michael Murillo is the only one who really can go down the right flank for Panama. So we're going to push Anthony Robinson. We'll match them 1-for-1. And what are you going to do? So you don't want to overcrowd that space anyway. So Christian would naturally come in, and Christian's smart. Where's the space? Okay, I'll come inside and I'll combine. And that one pass where you saw Aidan Morris slide it to him, and he took one touch and passed it to Sargent, who was wide open, and Sargent's then ball was a little bit behind Anthony Robinson. But Anthony Robinson had a number of opportunities, and his crossing was poor on the night. His service was not up to the standard that it should be. So I think that also played a big role. It could have been 4-0 if his service was on point a lot of times because they had numbers in the box, which was also something we wanted to see, right?
That's promising.
If you're getting the ball wide, get numbers in the box, which they did. They just a lot of the time didn't find the open man.
So let's talk really quick about Lucho Acosta. Now, Tones, I'm coming to you on this, and then Chuck, I want to hear from you.
Throw that out.
Okay. No. Well, he could potentially be getting citizenship, or is looking. I should say potentially is looking to get citizenship, and should get it finalized January, February. he could, if we're going to have a conversation, or if it starts to look like, and that's what this Mexico game is going to show, and we're going to talk about it more later on in the show, about are we going to maintain the same type of team shape that we saw in game one, or to your point, Chuck, or what you were talking about a little bit, do we adjust to who the opponent is based on the situation and how it's unfolding? But Lucho Acosta could come in and maybe solve some of these problems and be a little bit more of a traditional number 10. Would you think that we'll see Mauricio Pochettino give him a chance?
Well, I think for sure, if he gets a citizenship and says that he wants to play for the U.S. team, I don't know why you wouldn't give him a chance. For me, he's still on the outside looking in until a whole bunch of things happen, right? But I gotta believe that Pochettino would give him a look and would study him fairly closely if they're not already studying, knowing that coming down the pike here is Acosta. And if you want that type of player, see, I think the hard part for me is we still don't have any grasp whatsoever of the type of player Pochettino wants, right? And the type of player he likes because every position has a profile for every manager, right? So we've seen one lineup so far. And now we're going to see basically a completely different lineup moving forward. And we'll start to find out based on his press conferences, what he's liked, what he doesn't like, and the type of players that he uses in certain spots. So we don't have that. I think we had a feel for what Greg wanted, over time. And in the end, it maybe got a little bit stale, obviously, but I don't think we can have a real grasp. But just think about it, does it make sense to give a guy like Acosta a shot if he gets all this paperwork done? Of course it does.
Hell yeah.
And then you make evaluation. Yeah.
Yes. He's a diminutive playmaker. We don't create a lot of those here in this country. And if he wants to come aboard, let's give him a shot. That's all we want. Just give him a shot. All right. We're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to start digging into the US-Mexico rivalry, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So don't change the channel. Welcome back in to Call It What You Want. I'm Conrad Dino alongside Chuck Wagon and Big Tones, and we are talking about the U.S. men's national team. We looked back a little bit, reflected upon what we saw against Panama, the 5 players leaving camp. Now let's look forward to the Mexico game. This is our first friendly away against Mexico in 12 years. What? That is wild. And we are in quite a run against our biggest rivals right now. The U.S. holds a 7-match unbeaten streak versus Mexico. 5 wins and 2 draws. That is ridiculous. We've kept clean sheets in 5 of our last 6 against Mexico. Mexico's going to have a little bone to pick with us, Chuck. How do you think they're going to come out and play, especially now that they finally have a home game against us?
Yeah, I mean, this is big for them. It's really kind of to see where they are. This is the type of test that they want. We have played games of consequence, so I get the friendly thing,
true.
Scheduling friendlies, but the last time the U.S. played there, a meaningful game was a World Cup qualifier, 0-0 at Azteca. I think everyone remembers that
was
incredible run from Gio Reyna out of midfield. It was like he was a little magician, just being able to evade all these challenges, but then nothing comes of it in the end. What I will say is Mexico's in shambles. So this is a Mexico team that is still trying to figure out the federation, like the players. It just feels like they're nowhere near. They're a shadow of themselves. They're nowhere near what they used to be. So this is a good test. I mean, either way, we know what type of match it is. And when you talk about the history and the rivalry, they want this. They want it bad. They're going to have the fans, the supporters, all of that. I know it's a friendly, but they're not going to play like it's a friendly. So they need this game to try and build some hope, some momentum, try and figure out what their identity is moving forward. So I think this is going to be a massive test for Pochettino and the players.
Yeah, and also for Mexico. I mean, we're almost leading parallel lives. You got a new coach in charge now. This is Javier Aguirre's 3rd stint in charge of Mexico. He's got Rafa Marquez in now, who played in 5 World Cups. One of the few players on the male side to have achieved that. He's his top assistant, and they're grooming him to be maybe the guy moving forward after 2026. Now, Big Tones, you've played in Mexico a bunch of times for club and country. You may or may not be the same age as Javier Aguirre. I don't even know, but taken astray. But what are your thoughts on this particular moment in time? Let's talk about Mexico a little bit, because we've obviously talked about the U.S. To Chuck's point, they just can't seem to get it figured out. Under Tata Martino, under Jimmy Lozano, Javier Aguirre is back. They beat New Zealand 3-0 in his first game in charge. They tie with Canada 0-0, and they played this friendly against Valencia recently, or a couple days ago, 2-2. They were up 2-0 and then dropped 2 goals.
And they're missing. Valencia's missing all their best players because it was a national break.
So yeah, shambles is a good word to use. Sometimes though, beware the wounded tiger. That's another cliche that's out there. What do you think, Big Tones?
Yeah, by the way, Gary's 10 years older than me. Just saying. Where are we going with this? Yeah, look, this team's been a mess. They got rid of some older players, although I think they brought Memo Ochoa back, right? They were, last window, they were getting rid of some of these guys. They've been in an older cycle. They do have some talented players. Obviously, one of those, Raul Jimenez, was probably the top striker in CONCACAF until the head injury at Wolves, and then it's taken him a little bit of time. There's been some issues with Santi Jimenez scoring goals overseas and not scoring with the national team and not fitting in. Edson Alvarez is injured now for quite some time. I mean, they've been, as Charlie said, a mess. They've been a mess defensively. We saw them in Nations League last year in the finals. The big concern for Mexico was depth in the speed in the back, and the U.S. was able to run at them a little bit. They're worried about that. They do have talented players. I like Huerta, who plays at Pumas, the young guy that plays on the left-hand side. Diego Lainez has come back he's come back to Mexico first, and he's come back into this, so there's guys in this roster. They've got their injuries as well to deal with. But there's guys in this roster that are talented. There seems to be something going on in that federation over the last, it seems like 10 years. It's probably less than that they just can't get it right. But I feel like you can come on almost every third podcast, Jimmy, and go, yeah, Mexico's got a new coach this time around, and we're going to, because that's been the cycle. The cycle has been, the only constant has been change in Mexico. But I'm here for it all. I'm okay with the mayhem there.
With our rivals struggling. Actually, the last time we lost, the U.S. lost.
Oh, don't even throw it out there.
Charlie Davis, you scored in that game, but we ended up losing, Chuck. What's the deal?
You were in the game?
You were in the game, Chuck.
I was in the game.
How could you let that happen?
I will say that what an experience that was, because you hear all the stories, but to go there and you got the oxygen
so hard.
Tanks at every locker. I was like, oh my God, it was 100. There's 100,000 fans in the seats 2 hours before the damn game. That's when you knew, oh, this is something different. This is real. But what a game. If I could go back in time, that's the match I would play over and over again. It was that type of experience. It's what dreams are made of. That type of environment. With your brothers, it's the U.S. versus Mexico. It's the game of all games in CONCACAF, and I hope we still feel that in even in this friendly coming up.
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm sure the fans will come out. There wasn't as many fans for the Valencia game, but as you mentioned, the B team for Valencia, so that's not going to draw too many in. But I think for the biggest rivals, Estados Unidos in Mexico, yeah, it's going to be.
And the player and the team is just not good. Think about the players that they had in terms of quality and creativity, and from the Dos Santos brothers to Carlos Vela to Chicharito. You had guys with different qualities and players that could hurt you 1v1. And Tecatito, for instance, who fell off a cliff, but he had that one moment where you go, damn, who's gonna stop these players?
Yeah, when I played against Mexico, we had Cuauhtemoc Blanco. Was one I was marking, and then Jared Borghetti. So you had some guys up top, and you obviously had a creator in Blanco who didn't have a neck, but man, he could play. I always marveled at that guy. He didn't look like an athlete. He looked like he should be managing a Home Depot or something, but he was amazing at holding the ball up. I could never see the ball, and he was one of many players that when you get to play at a higher level, just how good they are at holding people off. Blanco was one. I remember Guillermo Barros Schelotto who was really tiny, but I could never get the ball off of him. These guys are just, I just don't see us producing those types of players. But
I go back to the Garcia Aspays.
Garcia Aspe was excellent.
You know, Ramirez, the left back Ramirez.
Oh yeah, Claudio Suarez.
Claudio Suarez.
Dude, beast.
Luis Garcia, Hermosillo was a beast. Luis Hernandez, like those days were also, that was a good group of players. But the Blancos of the world, the Rafa Marquezes of the world, that those teams were stacked, man.
Yeah,
absolutely
they were stacked.
And
now there was a little bit of fear, though, right, Chuck? Yeah, it doesn't feel like maybe they're not as afraid of us.
I feel like the Mexicos that we knew, right? The Mexican national teams that we played against, that we saw, one thing that we always were taught was when you lose the ball, you don't get it back. That you're defending, you're chasing. It's terrible. It's a terrible experience because they had great players in midfield. They controlled the game. They controlled the tempo. You played the way they played. You were forced to play their tempo because they were that good. Now, look at their defenders. Look at their midfield. It's slow. They give the ball away. They feel more comfortable out of possession than they do in possession. What Mexico national team have you ever known to be that way? That's my point. When you look at this group now, there's no one that fears you. There's not, as Bora would say, if you smell the game, there's nothing that you're wary of. You're not fearful of, oh my God, if we lose the ball, we're not going to see the ball for 10 minutes. We got to chase the game. We got to be super organized because they can break us down 1v1, and we need help on Cuauhtemoc Blanco or Gil Dos Santos or Carlos. You don't have those players, and it's a little bit of it's a little sad that Mexico is in the state that it's in, because we need for the U.S. to be at the very best. We need to be challenged in CONCACAF. We need a strong Mexico.
We got Canada now. We got Canada. Well, we're good.
I'd rather in world football, you look at Mexico, you look at Canada. They're stronger. They're beating better teams. That allows us to be that much better, which gives the games when we play in CONCACAF a little bit more meaning. That's what I'm saying. Of course,
no, I get it. How many times did you go? I don't know if you guys ever did it. I did this goalkeeper. I literally in the second half I used to go, okay, I think today the penalty kick against us is coming in the 81st minute. Like I kind of knew it was coming and it seemed to come almost every game when you're watching them play. But yeah, they're not the team that they were. They're going through it's an okay group of players. Yeah, it's okay group of players, but they're not producing. It doesn't seem like they used to.
What's interesting is
off a cliff.
But Santi Jimenez is a good example, right? They have a player, and he's hurt right now. He's going to be out 3 months with a thigh injury, but he's one that's playing. He's like their Josh Sargent in some ways, where he scores for his club team, but with the national team, he just can't seem to find the net a little bit. Chuck's reaction to my Josh. But I'm just saying, just stats are stats. Josh is going to come back in. He's going to be great
You just hoof-footed Josh Sargent right in the hip.
Santi Jimenez scored like,
that's
scored like 55 goals in the Eredivisie every season.
Messed up. That's
Josh is crushing it for Norwich, but when he comes in with the national team,
you absolutely caught him with a howitzer.
That wasn't. I'm just saying. Listen, they're both talented players. I have a ton of respect for both of them. I'm just saying that they score a lot for their club team and are much more prominent for their club team. And then when they get with the national team, it just doesn't hit the same way. They're not clicking the same way. And that
how many of our nines have scored, Jimmy? How many of them have scored over the last 2 years of our nines? I'm not making an excuse for Josh Sargent. That's what you're getting judged on.
No.
How many? How many goals?
Right.
Pepi, Balogun.
Balogun. You could throw Haji right because he did play the 9 when he came into Nations League to save the day.
In the World Cup. Well, no, Nations League he played out left. Remember, he tucked inside. I was calling that game. He came in as a left-sided player,
and he just came up and went up top.
Yeah. No, he scored twice in that inside channel. Remember, he came inside. But okay, if you want to throw them, we don't score a lot of goals with our 9s, man.
Well, they don't get a lot of touches. Sargent had 16. I see it. Balogun, we hear having like 9 or 10 touches a whole
which
game.
Then goes into the whole 10 debate. Would there be more touches if you had a 10 who was connected to a striker to give them support? Or are you just saying, you know what? Just stay in the box, stay high. I don't want you involved in any of the buildup. Just start the line for press when we don't have the ball. And then when we do have the ball, be out of sight, out of mind, stretch the back line.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to get into it a little bit more, but I just want to state that Josh Sargent hasn't scored for the U.S. since 2019. Okay. So, yes, he understands that he's going to take some strays.
I saw the list of players that have scored.
I see Ives putting in Balogun has, Pepi has.
Damn, Vines has
I
scored.
know that. I didn't mean it literally.
We're taking our next break. When we come back, we'll get into our projected starting 11s for both Mexico and the U.S. So don't go anywhere.
Aidan, can you talk to me about your performance specifically? I thought you stood out. You know, you were one of a few players who really were playing on the front foot and looking to always go forward. How has that transition for you been? Because, you know, in the earlier U.S. men's national team days, maybe it was a little bit slow or the game was too fast. Now it looked like you were setting the tempo.
Yeah, in any new environment, man, it takes time. You know, and that was something that was one of my goals this year, was be able to put together more consistent performances with the national team. And I think I've been able to do that. And even last night, you know, I felt like I played a good game, but I felt like there was so much room for improvement, you know, and I think just tidying up some things, and it's still room for improvement for sure. And yeah, I'm glad you guys thought that way, but you know, me, I'm always looking to grow and be better and hopefully help this team as much as I can.
All right, we're hearing there from Aidan Morris, who had a special interview with our very own Nico Cantor and Charlie Davies. That'll be on Morning Footy tomorrow. Chuck, your thoughts on Aidan Morris? You got to live your whole interview with him. How are you feeling about his mental state and any insight he gave on the team overall?
I think you can see he's matured and he's confident, and he's obviously diving headfirst into this process. He stood out in this match. That's a good first impression. First impressions are everything, right? And I think for Mauricio Pochettino to look at Gianluca Busio and Aidan Morris in particular, as well as I'd probably throw in Mark McKenzie in there as well, to say, wow, these are guys that are depth pieces that actually I see a lot of value in, and I gave them the opportunity, and they showed me that they could do it in the week, and they performed. So for me, I think when you look at what Aidan Morris has done so far in this short amount of time as a professional, and now just kind of scratching the surface, he's hungry. He's not letting it get to his head. You could tell he's positive. I like that. I think he's a good kid. Obviously, he went from Wilfred Nancy. Now he's with Michael Carrick. He's playing in the championship, which is super fast paced. So you could tell that it's helped him adjust to the international game, because it didn't seem like it was too far in front of him where it had in the past.
I mean, pretty nice list of coaches to be working with, right? Wilfred Nancy, arguably the best coach in MLS. I don't even know if it's worth arguing anymore. It's clear he's the best coach in MLS. To Michael Carrick, and now Mauricio Pochettino. That's a pretty nice list of names that you get to work with in your young career. Big Tones, let's use Aidan Morris. And again, that full interview is going to be on Morning Footy tomorrow, so make sure you check it out. Let's use Aidan Morris now as a segue into our projected starting 11. Would you start Aidan Morris again in this game, or would you give, let's say, a Testman or somebody else a chance?
Well, you got, I wrote some of this down in the break here. You got three options really for two, right? If you're going to play with two, you got Aidan Morris, you got Busio, and you got Testman. So based on one of those two guys is going to have to play again from the start. I would think Aidan Morris is that guy, and you give Testman now maybe an opportunity next to Aidan Morris. And
you could put Musah in there though, if you wanted.
You could, but we don't really have a right-sided player right now. It's him and Zendejas right now on the right side. So I'm guessing,
I don't want to see Zendejas, to be honest.
Yeah, no. So I'm guessing if Mauricio Pochettino, talked about Musah with wanting to give him confidence and give him a new position, and then he goes and scores a goal, from a psychological standpoint, do you put him out there again and go, okay, you got the job done once. Maybe I'll leave you out there for now, because we do know he's played in that position. So, but in the middle of the field, it's 3 for 2, right? Again, it's Morris, Busio, and Testman, assuming that he goes with two holding midfielders away from home in Azteca. Or no, they're not in Azteca. They're in Guadalajara, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but still away from home. I think he stays with two. That's for sure.
All right, let's take a look then at what we're hearing is going to be the projected starting 11. We don't know for sure, of course. Anything can change. We got Matt Turner in goal. We got Jedi on the left. Trusty and Miles Robinson, center backs Joe Scally on the right side, even though if it's going to be something similar that we saw against Panama in terms of how we move, he'll probably slide in to be a little bit more of a back three. You got Tanner Tessman and Aidan Morris in the 2 holding spots. Malik Tillman at the 10, the lone 10, as it were. Yunus Musah will be back on the right, and Haji Wright will be where Pulisic was on the left, and then Josh Sargent up top. So this begs the question, though. You could put Zendejas at that right side, Chuck, which you said no.
I'd rather not see him. He's had multiple chances but
not under Pochettino.
And he came in as a substitute,
but not under.
I haven't seen anything from him that tells me he's going to fit in. He's going to fit in, and he's going to change. He always goes into his left foot. It's super predictable, and I'd rather not see that.
Yeah, Chuck doesn't like Alex Zendejas. Let's just get it out there.
Not quick enough with his decision making.
No, that's fair. It's fair. He hasn't made the most of his opportunities.
And yeah, so
no. I'm just giving you a hard time. There's nothing that you're not.
Yeah, I know you're not triggering me yet.
Yeah, kind of. You're almost on the precipice of it. So let's go back to the goalkeeper then. Tones, would you roll out Turner again, or would you give Schulte or Horvath a chance here?
Yeah, I was thinking prior to listening to Pochettino's comments post-match when he talked about I'm happy for Matt. He used the word, and they use it in South America and in Europe as well, and in the Latin language, suffering, right? He's suffering at his club. And I remember Roberto Donadoni talking about this all the time when I played with him in New York. And he seemed generally just happy for him. So I wonder, I'm guessing that he rolls him out again. And continues to give him confidence. Look, I still think Matt Turner is like everyone in U.S. soccer. They still want him to be number one, but I know there's concern that he's not getting the time. We've sort of talked about that forever. So, but I do think, Jimmy, he gets an opportunity here again in Mexico.
Yeah, and you're going to have 2 new center backs in front of you as well. If Austin Trusty and Miles Robinson do get rolled out, it's nice to have some continuity, I would say, in some of the positions, especially the spine of the team, center back, goalkeeper, holding midfielder. And it looks like Aidan Morris, based on what we're hearing, will get the lineup against Tessman. I'm excited for Tanner Tessman in particular. In that position in the field, I think it's always better to start off a game, really kind of help set the rhythm and the tone of how the team's going to play on both sides of the ball. So it's a big opportunity for him because he was only an addition to the squad based on injury. So for him to get in and get a start and prove himself, I think could go a long way to him getting it called back in the future. Malik Tillman makes sense. Didn't play a lot against Panama. This will be his chance to also get a start. Very similar thinking there. But let's go to the number 9 spot. Brandon Vazquez versus Josh Sargent. Brandon Vazquez has done well with his time with Monterrey, scoring some goals already this season, Chuck. Do you give Sargent another run out here, or would you go with Vazquez, who plays in Mexico regularly? So whatever these conditions are going to be, he's pretty used to.
You know, I'm not a big fan of, just play a player here because he plays in this country and he's used to the style and he's used to the climate and the environment. If you want to get another proper look at Josh Sargent, throw him out there, right? Or you give Brandon Vazquez the nod and see if, hey, let's see what it looks like. I think we've all talked about it ad nauseum. We want to see, I think Pochettino wants to see as many players as he can in different places and giving them different opportunity. Brandon Vazquez was called in as well as a replacement player. So I could see him sticking with Sargent and then bringing Vazquez in as a sub because Ricardo Pepi went back to Holland. Ricardo Pepi probably would have started this game had he stayed. So I could see that they give Sargent another run, especially since he didn't have the best of games, to see, okay, we'll give him one more shot, see how he is. And you know how it goes. You get your opportunity. You don't take it. When Balogun's back healthy, Sargent's just going to fall further down the list because then, it's Balogun, Pepi. I think Pepi may have been below Sargent. And now after Pepi coming in and scoring and Sargent struggling in front of goal, maybe obviously the order shifts.
Well, I think what's interesting too, based on what Mauricio Pochettino said about making sure that they send the players back in better conditions and being really thoughtful and intentional and meaningful about managing their minutes and what they can get out of them. I suspect we're going to see maybe if Josh Sargent starts, then you're like, I'm giving you 45. You got 45 minutes here because I want to be respectful of your club and playing in the championship in Norwich, having a game basically every 3 or 4 days. and then Brandon Vazquez can get a look here. So if we did a bit compare and contrast between these two particular players, Brandon Vazquez, not that many caps, 8 caps, 4 goals, and Josh Sargent, 26 caps, 5 goals. And as we mentioned before the break, Sargent hasn't scored for the U.S. since 2019. However, he hasn't had a lot of minutes either, and maybe the opponents have been a little bit different along the way. I think what Vazquez does provide, though, Big Tones, is a little bit more of a target. And Chuck said it earlier. We had a lot of crosses in against Panama, but we weren't getting on the end of that. And I think that's one of the gifts.
Bad crosses too.
That's true.
I mean, it wasn't like there were great crosses and guys were missing it or not in position. A lot of the crosses were cut out by the first defender, or they were way off or far post drifting, so there maybe the one that I'll say, okay, Sargent should have finished the cross from Musah, and then Mark McKenzie did a turtle header and got put his neck in and missed the ball. Those were the two chances that you header. Say, okay. Yeah.
I can see both arguments for both those two number 9s. With Vazquez, I'm with you, Jimmy. He just gives a different dimension. So if you think you might get pinned back a little bit, do you use Vazquez maybe as your target guy to hold the ball up for you a little bit more, be a bit more physical? But don't be surprised if we just see 45 minutes from both of those guys. I leaned the other night when we did this the other night talking about players. I'd lean towards Vazquez in this match. So. But I think either one that starts, I think we'll see the other one at some point.
Yeah, and then with regard to Mexico, very quickly, Raul Jimenez, most likely going to get the start, has been revitalized with Fulham this season in the Premier League. Excited to see how our 2 center backs, whoever starts, perform against him, because he's been full of confidence. And Pineda is another player that I think is very good. He scored against New Zealand. Finds himself in good pockets of space, got good feet, and can make that final pass as well. Huerta from Pumas, 23-year-old on the left side. He scored a goal against New Zealand as well. I really like his game. I think he's going to be an up-and-coming player for Mexico. Herrera is another one. He scored against Valencia a couple days ago. And they got Romo Alvarez holding it down. They got some good players.
That's a weak-ass midfield. Let's be real.
Okay, but they still, if you give them time to play, they're going to be able to play. That's the thing. But our pressure seems
you give Panama time to play, they're going to play.
Well, yeah.
So I mean,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
We got Coach Chuck going on right now. I absolutely love it. You're in full Coach Chuck mode after winning the tournament, by the way, with his youth team. Congratulations, Chuck. We love that.
Go.
We love that. All right, we're going to take our last break and call it what you want. When we come back, we'll give you some predictions because that's what we do. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into the stretch run of Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Tony. And guys, time for predictions. U.S. versus Mexico in Guadalajara, our first friendly away from home in 12 years, because mainly we play these friendlies in the U.S. for, I'm sure, financial reasons. But we're finally going down there. And in some ways, I like that. We're getting tested outside of our comfort zone a little bit. So it's going to be an important sink or swim moment, maybe for some of our players in the eyes of Mauricio Pochettino. Big Tones, I'll come to you. Let's start with your prediction for the lineup first, and then give me your score. Because even though we have something projected, or maybe a player that you'd like to see, and then you can give your prediction.
The only thing I might have changed from that one, we had Busio and Aidan Morris, right? Maybe Testman for Busio, just because of a minutes thing. Yeah, other than that, probably the same. Vazquez would be the only other one. And from a prediction standpoint, gotta hate predictions, Jimmy, because none of us have ever been right on any one of these.
There's no cameras, nobody's listening. Just between you and I.
I'm gonna go dos.
Dos. Hell no. No. Are you crazy? We're not gonna tie that team.
2.
No.
Okay.
All right. Well, what do you got then, Chuck?
I hope you're right. What do you got then, Chuck E. Cheese?
Did you like the Chuck E. Cheese? I love that. That's going to stick. Chuck E. Cheese. What do you think? Outside of the cardboard pizza you sell at your restaurants, what do you think that you're going to get for a score in this one? And would you change that lineup at all? Would you change that lineup at all, though?
Oh, that's so far off what I gave Jimmy.
Yeah,
2-2. 2-1.
Hey, a win versus a draw is a big difference.
We've only
It's a
won in
big
Mexico
difference.
once in our history. We've only won in Mexico once,
This is going to be a second
what?
time.
courtesy
So
of Michael
what?
Orozco.
I'm gonna go. We win by one. We win by one
Win
goal.
by
Whether it's
one.
1-0, 2-1, 3-2, whatever it is. I think we win by one.
Okay.
Um,
And would you make any changes to that starting 11?
Okay,
that was
I'm going
projected?
draw, Jimmy. 0-0, 1-1, 2-2, 3-3.
Yes,
I'm going
beautiful.
draw. How about
He's
that?
going
Hey,
draw. I'm going win.
Listen,
Uh,
Big Tones, he's Chuck E. Cheese. He's an entertainer first.
That's it.
You know,
That's right. You're correct.
he's giving
Hey,
out tickets at skee ball right now.
Facts.
Everybody's a winner. Everybody's a winner.
Dude,
So wait,
I'm really
any
good at
changes
skee
to the
ball,
lineup?
man. I'm
You
really
know-
good at skee ball.
I can
The thing is, Busio played really well too. So it doesn't really even feel right to take him off.
Yeah.
Out of that. And I'd like to see someone else outside of Brent Aronson at the 10, to be honest. If Tillman
think with
is
Tillman.
there, yeah, I'm good with that starting 11.
All right, we
good
just
with
heard from Charles E. Cheese over there. Thank you, Charles. We appreciate you. I'm gonna say 1-1. I agree with you, Big Tones. I think this game's gonna be a little bit different.
No, you can just go draw. You don't have to give just.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
draw.
go draw.
You're
Or
good.
10-10, 9-9, 8-8.
Just so evil.
think
You guys
it's
are
gonna be
evil.
tight. Both teams are trying to work through, this new identity under a new manager. So I think it could be not as flowing as we'd like, but hopefully a good game nonetheless. All right, that's it. I'm calling it a show. Call What You Want is done for today. Come back and join us, though, on Wednesday. If hopefully you're night owls out there, 12:30 a.m.
Oh my
Eastern.
God, what a
These two guys are going to be in their
grind.
pajamas, and I'll be hanging out because I'm on the West Coast, so it's not that big.
But
of a
I
deal.
love this game.
The first friendly game on Mexican soil in 12 years. Very excited to see how the second game goes for Mauricio Pochettino and a new set of players. I think there can be a lot of changes in the lineup. Should be a lot of fun, and we're going to break it all down for you here on the Golasso America YouTube channel. On the Golasso Network. It's going to be fantastic like always. So thanks for hanging out. We'll see you soon. Later.
Yeah.